Let's ask our A-plus panel for the day, host of Watchdog on Wall Street, Chris Markowski, and president of Walser Wealth Management, Rebecca Walser. Rebecca, we'll begin with you. Should Congress consider bailing out struggling states?
Listen, it's just not a simple yes or no. And the reason for this is because you've got states that are, not necessarily running these huge deficits that have scaled back, and then they're trying to reopen. You've got other states that have a much bigger tax burden, a much bigger tax, cash flow that comes into their state, and they have a lot more government programs. And those are the states that tend to want to more slowly open or even not reopen, even though President Trump has introduced these three tiers 1, 2, and 3 on reopening. So I think if a state is not actively, pursuing reopening and not following the guidelines and really not trying to make reopening happening, it's going to be really hard to not open and then go and hold your hand out to the federal government and say, give me a bailout. And it is a problem. It is a problem for states that don't have as heavy of a tax burden to not need a bailout, and yet certain other states to get, we call that disproportional, and that's a problem.
Yeah, Chris, I think you and I would agree with what Rebecca is saying. I guess what I wonder, especially when you look at a place like New York, how do you keep it from getting political? How do you set the guidelines so that if the federal government does give some money, it's going to be perceived as fair?
It's interesting how you're going to have to structure something like that with strings attached, saying if we're going to give this money, it has to go to this or it has to go to that. As we all know, sometimes bankruptcies can be an opportunity to restructure issues that you might have. Take a look at New York State right now and how many people can't even get unemployment because they're running a computer system back to the 1950s. Why are they doing that? Well, because the system they currently have needs a lot of state employees, and we can't lay them off.
So, Chris, are you supporting like what Mitch McConnell was suggesting, is some of these states should go bankrupt?
I don't have a problem with it if you can restructure and come out on the other side. Listen, I live on Long Island.
But okay, let me play devil's advocate here. Sorry, I put my hands in front of you.
It's okay.
That restructuring may mean cutting your costs by not paying pensions to firefighters and teachers and that sort of thing. Do you want that to be the consequence?
Well, slowly but surely, some of these pensions have changed to some degree where the actual employees are actually picking up a little bit more. No, I do think that the pensions that are promises that were made are going to have to be met. But the issue is you're going to have to make cuts somewhere. And the overall payroll for the state of New York is insane. Every other building in Albany, New York, I grew up there, is a state office building. Who knows what's going on there? What I do know is there's a mass exodus out of this state. Every weekend here on Long Island, well, back before there was a crisis, there'd be something happen at some convention center where move to Florida, move to Texas. That has to stop. It really does. You're losing all of your best customers.
Rebecca, let's talk about the markets. Are you encouraged with how the markets are responding now that states are beginning to reopen?
I mean, I do think that we're still in a bear market, and I do see that continuing for a while because it's going to be a slow recovery, right? I do think that we will rebound some, and I think more than people are expecting as businesses reopen, just for what we could maybe potentially call irrational exuberance of, oh my gosh, businesses are reopened. I can actually go out to dinner and go to a movie, maybe see a concert or go to a sports thing. I know it's going to take some time. I understand all of that. But yes, the markets are happy that states are saying, hey, let's start to reopen. We need to reopen. This was truly economic suicide. That was necessary at the first, but I definitely think that the data has shifted. The medical data has shifted. The University of Washington's numbers have been proven to be so grossly inaccurate that we have to start to see a reopening. And if you look at Sweden's model, where all they did was wear masks and stay open, they're looking really good right now. So if we had maybe approached this a little bit more cautiously with than a plain shutdown, we could have probably been a little bit further along. But that's okay. We've done what we've done. Let's start to reopen. Let's wear masks. Let's get back in business. Let's get it done.
Yeah. Now, people should know Sweden does have a high fatality rate from cases to deaths. But as you're saying, they're still in business, and still the death rate is still on the population, a fairly low level. And a lot of people think New York maybe should have done that. So, Chris, I'll leave it with you. Should there be more money now? Should the already projected $3.7 trillion deficit this year? Should there be more money? Should they go back and get more? And if so, for what?
I'm on the pause camp. Just stop. Okay, we keep printing and we keep printing and we keep printing. At some point in time, you're going to have to put an end to this. I know everybody wants infrastructure, but he's got their hands out at this point in time. That's not going to make the country get better. I'm with Rebecca. We need to open up the economy as soon as possible and go with our original model.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to open up. They want to get back. But how does that work I don't know, Rebecca, if you're in New York. I know you are, Chris. But how does that work in an environment where there's nobody in Times Square?
Yeah, that's exactly the problem, right? We got to get people to travel. So I go to New York probably once a month. I went to NYU Law there, and so it's like a second home to me. But I've been stuck in my home base of Florida. I'm a tax lawyer, so as you know, I run a wealth management practice from Florida. So I get a lot of Chris's clients to come down.
There you go.
But we got to get back up there. I would love to be back in the studio in New York. I mean, let's get this happening. I mean, come on. Let's start to look at the data and say, look, wow, this isn't exactly right. Let's fix it. Like, I guess I don't understand the mentality because, I'm on the economic and market side, but I don't understand the mentality of seeing now that the data didn't bear out and we still continue on the track that we followed because of the original data. I maybe I'm missing something, but I'm thinking I don't understand this philosophy. If we know now that the data that we use to get everybody at home is wrong, why are we perpetuating this stay at home? Let's be more aggressive now on getting back to work. I mean, I've heard some people say August.
Rebecca, let me stop you there. We will talk more next hour. You and Chris, enjoy having both of you. Thank you so much. Here to weigh in, our A-plus panel of the day, Watchdog on Wall Street host Chris Markowski and Walser Health Management President Rebecca Walser. Chris, we left off with you. Let me ask you about this. For instance, you've got Tesla asking a couple dozen employees to go back to work on Wednesday. What if they get sick? Is Tesla liable for that? We're going to have this question down the road, who's responsible? They could have gotten it from somewhere else, but the employer might say, no, I got it from the workplace, and you should pay for my coverage. And then they're going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. How are we going to deal with this?
Oh, I can already see all the tort attorneys circling in the water. Did you get coronavirus at work? They have big down in Florida. You got Morgan and Morgan for the people. No anyone's chasing anymore. It's going to be all new with this thing. Yeah, it is. I got to hope that we're going to put some protection for businesses. Obviously, it's very, very difficult to stop any type of lawsuit. You can hit somebody at 1 mile an hour from behind. It can get sued for $1 million. I think businesses are going to have to take precautions, and I think that they're going to do that. They're not going to want to get sued. But is it going to happen from time to time? Absolutely it is.
Well, Rebecca, what are your thoughts on who's responsible for employee safety?
This is what we would consider a calculated risk under the law. So, anytime you're an employee of any employer and the flu season is out and about, guess what? You could go to the office, think you're fine, and you could infect 3 other people with the flu and you could be out for 2 weeks, right? Is that the employer's fault that happened? Now, obviously, we're in a little bit of a different situation because we're working or we're under these stay-at-home orders. And so as government lifts that, then the individual employer, has the decision to make, do I bring people back or do I not? But I am a lawyer, so I will just tell you, an indemnification agreement strikes me as a potential opportunity to say to the employee, listen, the government has lifted these orders. We can come back to the office. We would like to resume normal operations. But I just want to make it clear that if you do come down with the virus, we don't know where, and there is no way to trace where that could possibly have originated from. So we're not going to be held liable if you want to come back to your job. And I mean, let's get this clear here. We have to reopen. We have to get businesses going back again. Yeah. So we can't hold employers and, reopen, get the economy going. But now we're going to sue you because I got the infected. I mean, give me a break. I mean, this is America. We need to get back to work, and let's not make everybody the scapegoat for our own problems. Okay. It's a virus worldwide. That's it.
Rebecca, if somebody does get sick and they're out 2 to 3 weeks and they only have like a week or 2 of medical paid leave, how do you think that should work?
Well, that's part of what the PPP did, right? So we would have to see where the PPP is and how that kind of gets wind back into reopening, because PPP deals with you having employees that are out that are due to sickness or due to caring even for relatives that are sick due to the coronavirus. And that allows you to kind of recapture some of that or government funding for that. So we'd have to see the intertwine of the reopening with existing government plans to deal with this virus. But that is something that is absolutely, yes, we need to get people to facilitate it. And I don't know that employers can afford that, right? Can they afford to bring everybody back and then pay for everybody to, be off for 3 more weeks sick? I don't think so. They're out of money. They have no money. They need to work.
Chris, Rebecca brought up the PPP. Do you think that we could even handle any more debt? Do you think we could even go back for more?
You could keep printing, I guess. I mean, keep the machine going. That's one of the big popular programs on Netflix is, what is it, Money Heist there, where they keep the machines going as long as they possibly can. I'm not a fan of doing this anymore. And the reality is she's right when it comes to small businesses. I've spoken to many small businesses saying, what am I going to do with this PPP program? I've got to pay rent. I've got to pay all these other things. And the CARES Act, which dealt with some of the issues in regards to people being off from work when they were sick, that's another issue as well, because it puts the onus on the employer. And what if the employer can't afford to pay it? So it's a very, very difficult situation. I think business owners are going to have to go case by case. But the only answer to this at this point in time is getting people back to work and opening up the economy. Take a look at the stock market today. It's doing extraordinarily well, and it's based upon, man, we're starting to see things open up in various different states. But you want a really good, hard look at what's happening in the economy, take a look at the oil markets. Nobody's buying fuel. That means the economy is very, very weak right now. That's a much better measure right now than the stock market.
You were reading my mind. I was just going to ask you about that because it's down another 25% today. Is the only way that goes back up is for the economy to get going again? Rebecca, I'll ask you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, planes aren't flying. People aren't driving their cars. I mean, honestly, I looked at my car and I thought, my gosh, do I still have gas? Yeah, because I haven't only gone a couple times into the TV studio. I mean, we're not going anywhere. So we are a suburban, quasi-urban, economy that runs on electricity and fossil fuels. And so we're not taking those flights. I'm trying to get to Charlotte, and I'm having to convince people it's okay to, meet me in Charlotte. It's crazy. We have to get on these planes again. We have to get into our cars again. And that's only going to happen if we have someplace to go, like the office or a restaurant or something that's open. So let's please get some stuff reopened so we can get in our cars and spend some gas money, so we can go buy some gas, so we can get this price of oil out of the actual tank that negative last week. I mean, never happened before. I mean, I could, you pay me to store oil. Are you kidding? I wish I had a warehouse. I would have stored a lot last week. I would have been.
You need a tanker. You need a tanker offshore.
Oh, wow. Well, Rebecca Walser and Chris Markowski, a lively discussion. We always appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.